Hey everyone, ELD here with a spotlight on the ELD Legacy Open Championship deck, Mississippi River, or Creative Technique, as it is looking like it's going to be named now. The deck's getting more serious. At first, it was just kind of a meme, and I'll tell you, I actually, after losing to it on camera, started pulling the cards for this deck. If I had more City of Traitors in stock, I would jam this. I mean, it's a really fun thing that wins on turn 3 very often. However, it's hard to interact with. So sitting there with counter magic is not where you want to be. It's going to be very difficult to actually stop this. And things just trade off quite badly if you're trying to use Force of Will to contain this. So how does it work? Well, the mana base is totally janky. You're talking like 40 lands. They all can tap for 2 mana. Sometimes you have to sack them, like Sulfur Vent and Tinder Farm. Sandstone Needle and Saprazzan Skerry get a couple of taps each, but ultimately you're setting up with tap lands the first couple of turns, and then on turn 3, you can play a City of Traitors or Ancient Tomb. Now, you can play it slower if it's appropriate for that match, but in situations where speed is important, you're basically turn 3 jamming a cascade effect. So Boarding Party, which is totally reasonable on its own here, a 6/3 hasty creature, that can be a way to win a game. Aurora Phoenix as well. No haste here, but it's got some resiliency. Maelstrom Wanderer, though this one you're not going to cast on turn 3. We're going to explain how this most often comes into play in a little bit. And then Let the Galaxy Burn, a convenient sweeper, which will happen to hit just the creatures that didn't enter this turn, which will be your opponent's creatures, and all of your stuff is just piling on in one single spectacular turn. What is this cascading towards? Well, the only card in the deck that costs less than 6 is Creative Technique. So this is not like the regular Cascade decks that play like 3 casting cost Cascade cards with some 0 casting cost stuff. No, this is just literally 6 mana, boom, find a Creative Technique. Now, why is this so good? Well, it has Demonstrate on it. And what Demonstrate is a triggered ability that you can use to create a copy of Creative Technique for your opponent and for yourself. So your opponent, kind of worst case scenario, they hit a counter spell, and then that counter spell counters your copy. So you pretty much always are going to make a copy. There are some exceptions. If you're playing against a combo deck that can potentially win with a card that's revealed, like Alurin, we've seen that on camera. That can be a disaster. So once the ball gets rolling, you don't want to make unnecessary copies, but Creative Technique is going to then shuffle your library and reveal cards until you reveal a non-land, which is going to be either another Creative Technique or another Cascade card, which finds Creative Technique. So it's just really relentless. Once it starts going, I mean, Mississippi River was an apt name because of all of the branches in the river and just the unstoppable nature of it just continuing to flow. Ultimately, you hit an Emrakul, actually cast it with your Creative Technique, so you're getting the extra turn along with all of those other creatures on board. That is going to be a lethal attack, but it doesn't actually have to stop there, as Emrakul is on board, but you probably have more Creative Techniques to resolve, so you keep going. Eventually, you'll either run out of Creative Techniques or hit another Emrakul, which will then Legend Rule and shuffle all of those used Creative Techniques back into the library to keep the fun going. And it's just hilarious. I mean, this deck just absolutely steamrolls your opponent once it gets going. Counter magic is not really particularly effective, and it's a really dangerous deck. I mean, this deserves respect. The ways of interacting with it, you know, Wasteland, very strong. Rashad and Port can help, but you're going to need to close the game out. You can't just expect that you're going to be able to keep them off of 6 mana forever, because they're playing like 40 lands. So each turn, they're going to be making a land drop, and you need to get your game plan together, because if you give them time, just a single 6 mana, boom, Cascade into Creative Technique, and that Cascade is just going to continue going until you are very dead. One of the other issues with the deck is the sideboard. There's not a ton of cards that you can really use. You're basically looking at lands and things that cost more than 6, unless it's a card like Leyline of the Void. If you're really dead to Reanimator and it's in your meta, then you potentially bring in Leylines. But remember, you're going to be hitting those off of your Creative Techniques, and that's going to be a disappointing outcome, along with cascading into it. That's a disaster. So Leyline is a card that you can run, but you know, things like Boseiju or getting creative and running things that cost more mana, things like Mirrorshell Crab or Pyrokinesis. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of look at Mississippi River, or now as it's called, Creative Technique. I'll do a quicker video about this as well, but let me know what else you want to see for deck techs in Legacy. Thanks for watching.